super excited to see some familiar faces from some of our northern counties that I've worked with a little bit doing some training. So welcome familiar faces and welcome to all the new faces across the state. I'm really excited to be here today. Um, you already learned a little bit about me. I'll say just a couple of other things that maybe are a little logistic. I really love to just have you ask questions as they go. So I'll just say again what Sabrina said, which is don't be afraid to put your hand up and we'll make sure you get your question in. Or I like this to feel a little more like a conversation than a lecture. So let's see if we can make it that way by just, oh, I have a question about that thing you just said or what this slide just says. So please feel comfortable to do that. And then you're also welcome, like everyone, if I'm getting a little on my roll and I start talking too fast, you're welcome to say, hey, can you slow down a little bit? I want to make sure that, we're doing this in a way, the delivery is in a way that, everyone feels like they're coming along together. So I think that's all I want to say to get started. I'm really excited to take us through a lot of goals today. We're very ambitious, and I think Laura, I'm forwarding, right? Okay, so I think, let's see. Oh, it's not. Maybe you can forward it for me. It's not letting me.
Can you
There
click
we
on the
go.
screen and when she gives permission to you,
Mhm.
it should take a minute. You have to click on the screen and then you should be able to click forward.
Okay, great. So we are very ambitious today. We have a lot of goals we're trying to meet, and I want to think about this more as a survey. We're not taking deep dives into these goals, but I want to make sure that we're naming them so that whichever one you feel like, oh, I want to find more out about that. I want to like there's a space where I want to take a deeper dive. It's sort of named so you can go on that path after you leave here today and have more to be curious about. But I'll try to point out as we go when we're kind of hitting some of these goals. Um, any questions or thoughts as we get started here? All right, then let's. Oh, I think I did it that time. I think that was me. I advanced it. Okay. So I want to just start with the basics. Oh, I wanted to say one more thing is that I think we have a really big range of people on today. Like some of you are clinical supervisors, and some of you are maybe not licensed clinicians and maybe doing navigation or some other kinds of work. And there are pieces here that are for everyone. And there's some pieces that are a little heady around supervision. They're also for everyone. So I'll try to make them really accessible in terms of understanding how you might apply it to you if you haven't been through clinical training. But please don't be afraid if you're not if you don't have clinical training and don't know what the heck I'm talking about, ask because I don't know what the heck I'm learning about sometimes when I'm attending other programs as well. And it's just don't feel embarrassed or anything to ask. So let's start with just getting burnout defined. What I would love to hear from you guys about how you define it. Secondary traumatic stress, it's sometimes called. Sometimes we call it empathetic distress or fatigue. And I'm going to talk to you for a minute about why I don't like the term compassion fatigue, which is used a lot. But I'd love to hear in the chat or raise your hand. I'd love to just hear a couple of thoughts from you guys. We'll just spend a minute or two here kind of building a shared vocabulary. All right, I'm not seeing anything in the chats. Are they coming in?
I know, I was like, can you guys hear? How much is squeaking again? And I was like,
I think we've got
okay, well, I won't go.
we might have a couple people talking at once now. If you can raise your hand, that'll help us kind of direct the.
That looked like Anita. Anita
Oh,
Espinosa, did you have a question or a comment?
Sorry, I was gonna say compassion fatigue.
I'm seeing some things in the chat. Thank you, Anita. And I'm going to talk about compassion fatigue in just a minute. Thinking about procrastination, mental exhaustion, stressed out. We can no longer function in a helpful capacity. I love these are great. Thank you for sharing. And it's so interesting how sometimes language like is kind of vague. It doesn't leave us knowing like, oh, that's what that is, right? So I'm gonna just help us with a really simple version that we can work with today. I think. There we go. I want to think about it as a debilitating syndrome that makes it hard to get through each day. Whatever that is for you, whether it's the way your stress is impacting your body, whether it's the way rumination is taking over your mind. It can look like, in terms of how it shows up, different for each person. We know this, right? So important to have it be able to fit all the different ways that it can affect people. And the main piece, which is that it really keeps us from doing our work. It keeps us from being able to arrive emotionally, cognitively, and physically to work, right? So I want to take a minute on why not call it compassion fatigue. And I think it's important, and this really comes from the work of Christine Neff, and you'll see some more of her work today, that compassion is something different than empathy. Empathy is when we feel other people's feelings, right? Compassion is when we do the work of experiencing forgiveness or kindness, or it's not necessarily something that we're we're tying to an oh, I'm having a little pause here on my words now, but it's a different experience of what Christine Neff would say, actually filling our cups. It actually feeds our bodies and our emotional state and our cognitive state, whereas empathetic strain or distress or fatigue or drain can be taxing and emptying of our cups. And we'll talk about that some more down the road, but I just want to really differentiate that compassion is about filling our cups and empathetic distress can be about draining our cups. So that's why it's important for me to differentiate. Thoughts about that? Questions about that? I know I wasn't super clear right away. Yeah,
How does the compassion fill your cup? Because I always feel as compassion is going out also.
yeah, yeah. I was that Anita who said that, I think. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of it as actually a practice, the same way that a doctor might say to you, eating healthy and exercising will help your physical system stay more prepared to do the work it needs to do, right? And this is a similar idea that I have with compassion, is that it's a way that we integrate stress and stressors into our body for sustainability rather than empathetic distress, which I think is more what you're thinking about, which is I'm a compassionate person, therefore I'm engaging other people with empathy. And the more I engage with empathy and not take space or not have a way to practice compassion, I'm feeling emptier and emptier because it becomes for others rather than sort of a systemic approach. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So Anita, maybe you can go for the ride for a minute and we'll see if I can get us there through today. Okay, I think I see a thumbs up on that. So I'm looking at some other things. I saw Ty say something about countertransference. Did you want to say something about that, Ty?
Just the by definition for me would be when I start to again, you use the word empathy and empathetic distress and fatigue, where I
Mm-hmm.
might even start to feel my own
Mm-hmm.
stress and fatigue, that from which is being displayed from my clients.
Mm-hmm. Like like the boundary gets really mushy between what they're feeling and what you're experiencing. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. And this will probably come up again in the next couple of slides. So add on if you'd like. Okay, I think we're getting a pretty good definition here. This is what I'm working with today. You don't have to agree with me on the specifics of it, but we're going to go down this lane here with this kind of shared understanding for today. And I want to talk a little bit about what that means in terms. Oh, the slides get a little excited here. I want to talk about it in three levels. One is organizational, one is relationships, either with our clients or at home, and the third level is individual, how that impacts us. So when I think about how the impact that burnout has on organizations, we're talking about some of the things written here. I want to give you a moment to read them. Can you guys read them okay? Is that big enough print for you? Okay. And I want to point out, because this is one of our goals today, is to look at how burnout gets in the way of trauma-informed care. When we think about trauma-informed care, we think about the simple version is the 4 Rs, right? Realize, respond. I'm skipping one. Recognize, respond, and not re-traumatize. And when I think about the turnover and the trouble with continuity of care for organizations when there's a lot of turnover or people leaving or people, that we really don't have continuity of care and safe connections for our clients over time. And that can be very re-traumatizing. So I wanted to just point that piece out in terms of the goals we're working on today. We're going to talk a little bit more about why this happens down the road. So if you have some thoughts about that, hold on to it because we're going to come back to this question. Sorry, the buttons are really sensitive. So I want to talk about relationships and how they might impact relationships. I've got a few things written here. I bet you guys have a lot of experience with knowing how burnout might impact relationships at work and relationships at home. Anyone want to say anything about this one? We're starting to go from big picture of organizations, zooming in a little bit to interpersonal relationships. I think about Anita's question about empathy. And when I feel like I'm getting on the edge of burnout, I'm like, I say to my husband, I can't hear you right now. I got to take a minute. I got to be home for an hour with the dogs before you can tell me about your day, right? I got to figure out how to, do some of that self-care, do some of that like boundary setting because my empathy is drained, ability to engage the other person. And you can imagine if that's with a client or a person you're serving, an individual you're serving, that maybe our family is more tolerant of that. People we're serving might feel like that's rejection or misunderstanding. Do I have that right? Do you guys think? Is that how it shows up for you guys in your work and home? I see some
I
hands.
would agree 100%.
Who's
It's very
talking right
difficult.
now? I'm sorry. Is that Sylvia?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Sylvia. And then I see a couple other hands up, so we'll come to you in just a sec. Go ahead, Sylvia.
I tend to shut down and I don't realize I do that. It's like
Yes.
I've talked all day, I've been through stuff, and some clients, some days are easier than others.
Yes.
And on the drive home, sometimes it's just not long enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It sounds like I'm not the only one who uses the commute time to just like shake it up, shake the day off a little bit.
not at all.
Yeah, that's a good time to have some practices that you can use to help do that. But you're right, sometimes it's just that kind of day and the drive's not long enough. Right? I can't see all the hands, but I see Elizabeth and Kelly. Elizabeth, do you want to go? And then we'll go to Kelly.
Good morning, everybody. So for me, like I oversee all of my staff and so the clinicians and the CSWs and my PSR staff, and we're really busy. And I always try to check in and I teach my staff to check in with each other, teach my management to check in, and we look for that burnout. And what we're looking for is like the motivation has kind of dipped, right? And when it dips at work, then we know it's dipping at home. And I don't necessarily want my staff to feel like they have to come and like tell me their home life, but I always just try to check in. And I do that with myself too. I'm the same with Sylvia and anybody else. I use that drive time to just kind of unwind. I use it in the morning before I set up. And the clinicians, like, I really like when I see on their schedule that like they had a no-show, then I just tease them. I'm like, hey, you want to go take a quick walk?
Oh,
Or
nice.
hey, I made a pot of coffee. Do you want some? I brought Sonic ice today. I don't know if you guys have Sonic in your area, but like we all love that little ice. So as for me in leadership, I came up from the bottom up. And so burnout, understand that, just that passion that we have to want to do the things we do every day, but we do burn out. And so I remember thinking, these are things that I wish my management or my supervisor had done. And so I always try to keep those in the forefront. And of course I do them for myself too, but just finding those small things. If your agency is able to do just 1 hour breakaways so that you can meet with your team, those are the things I try to check in. And it's not just like once in a while, like this is like a weekly thing that I make sure I check in with them. So
Elizabeth, do you
it's just
use,
become a habit. Like
yeah,
it's just part of my workflow.
do you use any kind of burnout scale or anything like that, or is it kind of informal check-ins?
Informal. I started out with the scale, but it just didn't really fit with my team. Not saying it wouldn't fit with any other team. It just didn't fit with my team. And our team, I always give them like that voice and choice, like, how do you want to use this? Do you want to use this? And kind of just bringing different things to the table. But and initially, yeah, it worked. But now it's more of like, they'll just let me know, like, hey,
Yeah.
this is kind of how I've been feeling. So for me, it was a change to move it into just habit for us to do these things instead of just like, I see so and so kind of burnt. Let me go check it. Well, by the time I noticed that,
Yes.
how far have they gotten?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing. And I'm sure there'll be more. And I love that we can all learn from each other about how we do it too. I see a couple more hands, and then I'm going to keep us moving on because I have some breakout groups planned that I really want you guys to have some good time in, and you can share more of this with each other in small groups too. So maybe just the three people that I see with their hands raised now, and then we'll move on to the next slide. So Kelly, I think you were next.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Leah. There's three of us.
Okay, Leah.
Yeah, I have like a caseload of like 35 people. And when I first started this job, I've been working as a CPSW, case management, for like 3.5 years now. And so when I first started, I was like, I was just so overwhelmed and I would just shut down. Like I couldn't retain information and I couldn't think, I couldn't talk, I couldn't, there were so many things like I was struggling with. And I had to learn to say no, um, I can't help everybody at this one time, and that's really helped me a lot in taking care of myself. Compared to like now, like I just naturally, I do what I can, and then, I don't overdo it, or I try not to. And I do a daily meditation every morning, so that really helps to start my day.
Nice.
Um, but I have a special needs child, and so it can be really difficult at times
Yeah.
because I can be like at the school or like, I'm with clients all day and then something's happening at the school and then, just like it taps out my brain. It's just like I
Yeah.
can't, I
But
can't,
somehow we get permission to be fully human the way
yeah,
our clients are, that we have lives and things that contribute to our stress that we don't always manage. Or, are just too much for us. it's the story I think a lot of us know today. And how do we continue to be able to hold ourselves and take care of our clients because our stress levels go up and down, our suffering or exposure to hard things in our personal lives go up and down, right? It's thank you so much for sharing, Kelly. And then I think
Thank you.
Christy, I think you're in a group of a few. I see your hand up.
Yes, ma'am. So here our agency just finished a TIP training, trauma-informed care training from an
Nice.
agency called TIP,
Mm-hmm.
3 Fridays in a row, which really helped us as staff with each
Yes.
other, not
Mm-hmm.
recognizing how the trauma can happen within inside the agency
Yes.
and how it will also reflect onto our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Also allowed us to get to know each other and find out new things about each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a simple little thing to one person, like clicking their pin or
Mm-hmm.
voice or banging, is trauma to the next person.
Yes.
How do we handle those things?
Yeah.
As far as, you know, how we're impacted by our clients as well. It was an amazing training that we did, very informative, and I think will help us together as coworkers and for our clients.
Nice. I think it's a great idea for any organization to do a trauma-informed training. I know Santa Fe County has some for free, the state has some for free. And then there's some agencies, that you can pay, some companies that you can pay to have come in. And it is such a great way to begin to understand how important it is to look at things systemically, like how we are with each other as an agency and how we hold things like our empathetic distress and we're taking care of each other in that way, really reflect on how we take care of clients and the negative consequences that trickle down to the individuals we serve. That's important to look at, that we do no harm, right? That's our ethics code in our work, right? I thought there was one more person. I think I'm going to go on. Thank you so much for sharing that. And congratulations on doing that training. And maybe some people will want to hit you up in the chat to learn more about that company and see what they do. Would that be okay with you?
Yes, of course.
Cool. Nice. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move us along here, I think. Okay. I think I figured out why it was moving so fast when I clicked. And then, so we started with organizations, starting to look at relationships, coming down to our us, right? Our individual experience with it. And in trauma-informed care training, and this may be something that you guys did, Christy and group, is kind of break it down into these 3 dimensions, which is looking at your sense of efficacy at your work. It's really easy to begin to feel ineffective in your profession when you're burned out, like, oh, you're on the hamster wheel and never getting anyone better because by the time they get better or they leave, you're not sure what happens to them next, right? For us, there's a lot of like, well, we don't even know. We don't get to see them 5 years or 10 years from now. And then looking at the physical sense of exhaustion, the physical and emotional sense of exhaustion, our energy, our fatigue, just that ability to kind of get up and get moving, like how I feel every time I think about exercising. Like I know it's good for me, but I don't feel like it, right? Trying to get past that, I don't feel like it. When burnout comes, that wall to get past that, I don't feel like it, to do the things that we know are helpful for us, are helpful for the people we love, the people we work with, the wall gets really high. That barrier gets really high. And then depersonalization. And that's a big, long word to basically say we start to do a little bit of separating. It's like an empathetic separation, right? We aren't going to feel what you feel because we're full. We cannot take any more. And we're afraid that we'll get overwhelmed. That we'll just like, I don't know, like we'll get smothered by anything more. And so we separate and we sit in sessions with clients or we are navigating individuals and we're not really hearing and we're not really present with them. I bet there's a few of us who can relate to that one. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about that one. Like, I feel like one of the most challenging moments for me is when I'm sitting with a client and I realize I haven't been close listening. Like maybe I was thinking about that fight I was in last night or the puppy I have that tore apart all my furniture. And I forgot, and I didn't mean to be. And then I'm like, oh, I just sort of missed what the important thing was that person said. And then it's so easy for me to spiral into, wow, I'm pretty ineffective at being a therapist. Right? Anyone else? I see, Carl, your hand up. Yeah, can you take yourself off mute, Carl? There you go.
Yeah,
I got it.
funny. No, I've worked with people because of both trauma
Mm-hmm.
of their own,
Mm-hmm.
plus then working with people who have had trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they develop a depersonalization, derealization kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the most devastating things I've ever seen, because what happens, a person feels like they're walking around in a different world, kind of like the Truman Show.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at things happening like outside of themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're incapable of
Mm-hmm.
feeling any kind of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
They don't feel anger, but they don't know what joy is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Curious,
they're
Carl,
holding.
if I can ask you, because I think a lot of us here work with people with trauma and we know exactly what you're talking about. I'm wondering if you could share with us how you know when you're sitting with someone who's experiencing that, how you manage if you're maybe having some burnout or a little overwhelmed, or how does that impact you personally?
Well, when I see it, what I see starting out with is a flat affect,
Mm-hmm.
and they talk about things matter of factly. They don't have any kind of emotion attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ask them about what their emotions are,
Mm-hmm.
they can't name anything. They
Mm-hmm.
don't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me personally, when I see it,
Mm-hmm.
my compassion meter goes way up,
Mm-hmm.
because I can't, it's emotions that give
Mm-hmm.
our life so much more, well, enthusiasm, or it can tear us down.
Mm-hmm.
But these people, they're not having that. So
Mm-hmm.
again, my compassion meter goes way up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had to look at what are the various kinds of therapy to deal with depersonalization and derealization disorder.
Absolutely. So I think you're telling me two things happen. One is that you get maybe more worried because that means that trauma really impacted them. And so you sort of up your engagement maybe. On the other hand, I think the other piece that you might be saying, or I'm going to sort of reframe it back into this context a little bit, which is we should probably be worried about ourselves when we start to experience that, when we start to feel like we're going through some motions and not having a range of emotional experience in our day.
When our emotions have put up a wall
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that we're not being hurt anymore,
Mm-hmm.
that's a sign that we're going there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carl. And I think about, in terms of understanding the warning signs of burnout, this is part of one of the 4 R's of trauma-informed care, right? That we need to realize the warning signs. We need to be able to identify them for ourselves, not just our clients, right? Um, Laura, I see you, and then I think we're going to move on to the next thing. So if you have other questions, maybe you can write them in the chat about this. I want us to get to those breakouts and for you guys to have good time there. So
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Michaela,
Laura.
for the sake of time, you're about 15 minutes behind, just so you're aware. I don't know if you're seeing the direct message to you in the chat,
Okay.
so I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted you to know.
Okay. Thank you. Laura, did you? Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to share and break out. I would just support you to move on if you need to.
Okay, keep going. And you can also write it in the chat. You'll have time in breakout to talk a little bit more about this for sure. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to do a little practice together that hopefully, if you're experiencing any of these things now, will bring you into the room, into your bodies, reconnect with you. Because if you've been in a workshop with me before at all, or welcome if you haven't, I like to make sure we're doing the work together. We're not just talking about the work. So this is Patricia Hershey. She runs something called the Nat Ministry. And her mission is to think about, for especially women of color, that this idea of rest is resistance, that we don't always have to be producing. We don't have to prove to anyone our worthiness, that you get to rest. So she has this cool thing that she's done where she's set up scenes like this and just napped in public. It's pretty beautiful. I want to give you the opportunity right now. We're going to practice a little body scan together. You may turn your cameras off if you like. You may lie down on the floor if you have a clean spot. You may sit back in your chair and just find a comfortable position. If you do turn off your camera and if you do lie on the floor, make sure you can find your way back. I'm worried sometimes people fall asleep and then they're like, oh, I missed the last hour for the workshop. So if you need to set a little timer for yourself, we're going to go for maybe about 6 minutes. And let's get started. It's an invitation to rest. So start by just getting in a comfortable position. Again, you might lie down, your arms gently to your sides, or you might just sit really comfortably in your chair with your hands gently on your lap. And if you feel ready, if you feel like you're in a place where you can do this, close your eyes, see what that feels like. Give yourself permission to slow down, to be right here, right now. Your mind is going to want to take you to what happened this morning, whatever it took for you to get here, or maybe the dinner you're going to cook tonight when you get home. I invite you to continue to ask yourself to arrive right now to this moment. Start by taking a few breaths, just gentle exhales in and out through your nose. Feel the texture and the temperature of your breath as it goes in and out of your nose. And on each exhale, try to slow it down just a little bit. Try to soften your body just a little bit. Now begin to turn your attention to your feet. Maybe kick off your shoes if that feels good. Notice if there are any sensations, textures, temperatures. You don't have to do anything with what you notice. Just be curious. What are you experiencing? Maybe name, oh, that feels cold. That's a little soft. That's a little itchy. Start to bring your attention to your lower legs. noticing textures and sensations and temperatures as you follow the path around your shins, over your calves, and up to your knees. And as you breathe slowly and gently through your nose, invite your legs to melt. And we find ourselves at our knees, and I like to pause here and have a lot of gratitude for my knees. They've been working hard for me. This is a spot where I like to say, thank you, knees. I love you, knees. And maybe give them a mental internal massage. And now moving up to your thighs, feeling the resistance from your chair or the floor, noticing the space between your legs and the chair. And now, in your mind's eye, imagining yourself melting, the space getting smaller, softening into the chair or the floor. With every exhale, softening a little more. Now bring your attention to your hips. Like my knees, my hips have worked hard for me. I like to thank them. Imagine creating some space between the ball and the socket. Bringing your awareness up to your abdomen. Boy, we hold a lot here, just noticing how it feels right now. And maybe a little bit of soothing touch. A hand goes to the belly. Maybe two hands goes to the belly. Maybe a kind word. I love you, belly. Now bringing awareness up to the chest, making room for any sensations that come up there. Don't worry about trying to change anything. There's no wrong way to notice. Can you feel your ribs? Can you feel the space between the inhale and the exhale? Now moving to your fingertips, tracing the outlines of your hands with your mind's eye, noticing sensations there. Working your way up your arms, maybe feeling the texture of your shirt, maybe the air in the room. Now moving up to your shoulders and your neck, another place that works so hard for us. Often when we get to our neck or shoulders, we feel the urge to move them. Go with that urge if it comes upon you. If you feel a roll or a lowering or a separation from the shoulders to ears, there's no wrong way to notice. And then to your face and your facial muscles. Boy, they do a lot of translating of our world. Allow them to relax, softening your jaw and your tongue. The muscles, the teeny tiny muscles around your mouth. Notice, maybe play a little bit. Does a gentle frown or a gentle smile feel more relaxing? Around your eyes. Now just bringing an awareness to your whole body. Zooming out just a little bit, enough to see the whole self. And notice any sensations you have now. And when you're ready, taking a few breaths in that space, go ahead and come back and join us. And I'll give you just a minute to come back here. I'll know you're back when your screens are back on. Welcome back, Carl. I can see you. A few other folks coming back. All right. I'm going to keep moving us on. Thank you for taking a rest with me today, for taking the invitation to not have to accomplish anything for a minute, except you are getting CEUs to do it. So awesome, super awesome. All right. So moving on. Oh, I love all the hearts coming in. You guys, my heart feels so warm. I'm gonna get teary. I love it. We're like taking care of each other together. I'm like, it's so good. So I want to put us in our heads again a little bit. We're going to do the seesaw between the heart and the head, the body and the thoughts. And a lot of us know about polyvagal theory now, but this is not new. This is what people who do our kind of work have been trying to do forever, which is to teach ourselves and to teach the individuals that we work with how to regulate their emotions, how to be thoughtful in their responses rather than reactive. In the polyvagal theory, lots of folks who talk about this talk about the zone of tolerance or the window of tolerance. And I'm just going to use that for context today. So in polyvagal theory, we think the safe space is what we call the ventral vagal. The challenge space is when our sympathetic nervous system sets in, and that's when we get ready for sort of our fight or flight stuff. And then the dorsal vagal is the part of the nerve that talks to our nervous system, and then that basically shuts us down. That's when that depersonalization happens, right, Carl? I can see you, Carl. I can't see everybody, so you might just say your name a few times since I can see you. And this is what we're working with for ourselves, right? This is the systemic layer for the individuals we work with, for ourselves, and for our agencies. Like, it'd be interesting to think about, how does our agency stay in a ventral vagal space? What does that look like? What does that work look like, right? So we're going to talk for a minute about what we've traditionally done to try to stay there, to try to find that target spot. And traditionally, we've used sort of the old school self-care model, which is, and I'm not knocking it. I don't want you to hear like these things are bad things to do. But the old school model was, oh, you have to eat right and you have to exercise and go take a bath. And all these little drops that we put in our self-care bucket are supposed to refill us, right? It's up to us to take our bath, to take a walk, to cuddle our dog, and we'll be fine. And yet somehow, all of us practicing all of this kind of self-care, our agencies are still experiencing lots of turnover, people leaving the profession from burnout, right? So in the Harvard Review, they did some research on this, and they told us the 6 biggest reasons that people leave helping profession jobs. And I hope you'll go with the graphic that I made, because the graphs and studies aren't that fun. This felt like more fun to me. Are these things. These 6 things are the things that drain our buckets in our workplace. So take a look at this, and I think Laura is going to set us up with a little poll here. And I want to see what you guys see in your agencies or in your work experience. Which one has been the most problematic where you are, either now, or maybe think of a place where it was the most challenging, or a challenging role you had, or maybe the place now. We won't share this with anyone except who's here today. I'm just going to give you a couple minutes. Can you guys also see this? Maybe just give me a thumbs up. Can you see it coming, like people adding their thoughts?
Not yet. It'll show once we
Okay.
end the poll and we can share the results.
Oh, great. Okay. So you guys can't quite see what I'm seeing, but it's great. People are answering.
Just so you're aware, McKelly, you're about 20 minutes past. Just as a friendly reminder.
We knew it would be so. We knew it would be so.
I think everyone is happy with that last exercise, though. They don't, don't necessarily have concerns. I don't. I'm just want you to be aware.
All right, maybe just 30 more seconds. It looks like the movement has mostly stopped. If you guys think it's time to share. Well,
That's sharing now.
it's sharing now?
For
Okay.
everyone.
So everyone, I think, can see this now. And it looks like in this group today, the two biggest concerns are excessive workload. So I heard, I think someone saying managing 35 clients or cases. That's a lot, right? That's a problem we have in our children, youth, and families department in this state. It's a it's a struggle that a lot of agencies have, people having big caseloads. And then the second biggest one looks like lack of managerial organizational support. It's hard to feel supported by someone who doesn't understand the challenge of that caseload, and they are giving you that caseload, right? I see some people in the chat saying, if you're working with high-level trauma patients, I think this is what you're saying, Rosalinda, is that if you're constantly working with the highest level traumas, that can be overwhelming. Rather than maybe, 15 of those clients are sort of mid-range, low to mid, and let's see, I'm reading the chat a little more. Unclear roles and responsibilities, that is one that people tell me a lot about when I talk to them about their workplace. And for so many of us, we're having multiple roles without that having been our job description, right? Like I think especially about our bilingual colleagues who are often translating and interpreting and not getting paid more for that or not identifying that as extra work. Yeah. So we know from you guys giving us this input, some of the things coming in the chat, that, this is not made up material, that these things are draining our self-care bucket faster than our walks, our snuggles with our dogs can fill it. So I want to offer a different model today. And Sabrina or Laura, can I just click out of the screen that shows the poll? Okay.
Just close it.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad to see that it is something that you guys can identify with. Whoops, I went 1, 2, oops. Wow, that goes so fast. So I'm going to offer this self-compassion work as an alternative to that. But here's our kind of heady piece for today. Here we go into a little bit of the weeds around supervision. And just so I can get a sense, we've talked to a couple people. I think Elizabeth said she's doing a lot of supervising. If you can just hit the raise your hand button if you're supervising other people. Maybe not now, but before or now, or just so I can get a sense. Okay, so there's a good chunk of us who are great. Okay, so there's a lot of us who are supervising today. So this will be maybe new material, maybe just a reminder. And for those who aren't, let's think about in your discussion groups how you can make this useful in your work with individuals. And you can share with me how you think this could be useful. So in supervision theories, there are sort of 3 branches of how we think about how do we teach therapists to be therapists? How do we help younger, newer therapists like arrive to the work? Many therapists, I don't know about you guys, this was me, got out of school and I was like, oh, now I realize I really know nothing. And I have to start again in beginner's mindset, right? Like, oh, I have so much to learn now. And so there are these three sort of pathways supervision can take. One is the psychotherapy pathway, and that's basically like if I'm an interpersonal neurobiologist, or I'm a narrative therapist, or I'm an EMDR therapist, my way of working with supervisees would be to bring them along in that theory. Does that make sense? Okay, that's a hard question for me to ask when we're not online. But so we're really modeling our theory um, that we're coming from when we supervise our clients. The second pathway is developmental. So we're looking at what does a brand new therapist need versus maybe someone who is almost about to get their LPCC or almost about to have their full licensure if you're a social worker. So thinking about the anxiety or the nervousness or the challenges with certain ways of staying regulated in a session that new therapists might have and what they might need as they develop their skills and how what you offer them changes over time. The third path is called process or integrative, and that's really about looking at how do you case conceptualize? How do you think about this combination of who the therapist is, who the client is, what the organizational system in they're finding each other? Maybe even looking at things like gender and race and identities, things like that. So I want to tell you about one specifically that is in that raindrop of process integrative, looking at things a little more systemically. And it's Janine and Bernard in the 70s created this model, and I think it's pretty popular right now. And just go with me. This is the heady, I promise this is the headiest we're going to get today. We're going to live here for just a minute longer because I'm hoping we can put self-compassion in the context of this model and think about these three skills. So one is personalization skills. That's looking at basically how I experience sitting with the client, the potential for countertransference, my ability to self-regulate when a client is not. Then intervention skills. Can I teach or show or model or share how to do some breath work when I'm sitting with a client? That might be an intervention, right? So focusing a lot on intervention skills and how to teach tools like this. And then the third category is how to conceptualize the work you're doing with a client, right? Again, the layers of influence and organization that the client and you are intersecting with as you do the work. These are like big, right? This is big here. And if you can think for just a moment, and there is a worksheet that you guys have that says these things that if you can pull it up on your computer or print it out. And I'm going to give you a chance now to meet together and be able to, so you don't have to memorize that, and be able to talk to each other about what you think your style is in those first three categories. So whether you think you're modeling your sort of theory of therapy, whether you think you're more developmental, or whether you think you're sort of this process integrative piece. And then how much time do you think you spend within a supervisory session, either working on personalization, interventions, or conceptualization? And you'll have that cheat sheet so you can remember what it is. If you're not a supervisor, because I am understanding that a lot of you today aren't, I want you to think about this in terms of your client, because and the individuals you work with, because this very much reflects, it's just another layer. It very much reflects exactly how we often work with clients. Early on with a client, they might need more hands-on, more softness. Later, they can have more homework and skills building. That could be a developmental piece. So think about maybe take out this idea of supervisor and just think of yourself as how would I apply these things as I work with individuals? Where do I spend the most time? Talking about how they feel, offering skills, or kind of conceptualizing what's going on for them in a bigger picture. So that's what we're going to do now. Give you guys time to do that. I love that some of you got a chance to think about your styles. If you're a newer supervisor, I think we have learned pretty quickly. We don't have a lot expected of us in between graduating from school and getting our full licensure hours. And then all of a sudden we can be supervisors, but we haven't really had great training on that. So then we find our CEUs that we do are helpful, but they kind of, they can leave us pretty quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh, we were almost there. Okay, I want to go back one. I want to go back two. There we go. Okay. So how are we doing now, guys? Can you see that screen? Okay. So an alternative. And I wanted you guys to talk about the supervisory piece because I want to see afterwards how you think this will fit into that. Whether you think it's more of an intervention, whether you think it's more case conceptualization, or you think it's more personalization where we're talking about our emotions and things. So self-compassion, the difference that I see is that it's more of an ecosystem. So we're not trying to say if we do these things, we will be better. It's trying to say that stress and suffering are a normal part of humanity and that we need sort of a wash cycle, or we need to make sure it has all the pieces, the sunlight and the water and the goat poop or whatever, I don't know, that it needs to stay nurtured, right? And I think if we think about it as an ecosystem, then it's less about, oh, these individualized things that we do that we're responsible for doing to fill our bucket. We can see our nervous systems more as it's normal to have some drought. It's normal to sometimes have years where your tomatoes don't come in time, like this year for me. They're just green babies right now, darn it. It's normal for there to be suffering. That is human. It's how we manage it that becomes part of the ecosystem. It's how we think about what we do during those times. And the times when we get a whole bunch of tomatoes. Are we ready to do some salsa canning, Okay, so the Nagalski sisters, Emily and Amalia, they wrote a book called Burnout. Some of you may have read it. It's been out for a little bit. It came out right around the pandemic. And I'm bringing it in here because I think the thing about self-compassion that is so helpful is that it gives us the ability to separate these two things, stress from stressors. So when I do this with clients or with supervisees, I like to help them separate that, and doing some self-compassion work can do that because there are very clear strategies for stressors. And there's one in your file that you got today. We're not going to go over today, but there's so many different ways to do that. There's setting SMART goals. There's pros and cons lists. There's so many different ways of problem solving stressors. Once you're able to identify it from those revved up feelings you're having inside, which is your body's nervous system stress response, right? That's the stress, the physical response in your body. So self-compassion, I think, gives you space to separate those two out and be able to choose how you need to attend to them, which is why I bring it in here. So what's the practice of self-compassion? And a lot of you already know this. It comes from the work of Christine Neff, Tara Brach does some of this work. There's lots of people doing this kind of work now. I have found it personally very life-changing, and I think for a lot of clients, very life-changing. And so I offer today as a way for us to help manage burnout. The three components: mindfulness, that's observing, on purpose, common humanity, which is recognizing what makes you human in this experience of suffering you're having, and self-kindness. And that's how we talk to ourselves and think about ourselves in the experience of our suffering. So I'm going to keep us moving along pretty fast because I want to offer you a practice right now. That I think will give you a sense of something you could do with your supervisees or your clients or individuals you work with. I think, I don't think you have to be a fully licensed clinician to do this work. And I want to offer you now that work. So is this a time, Laura, that we could maybe take down the screen for just a minute and be able to see each other? Yeah, there's everyone. It's nice to be able to see more people. So this comes from Christine Neff's work. It's called a self-compassion break for supervisees. And we're just going to jump right in so we have time to do it. And then we're going to get back in our groups and I'm going to let you practice with each other. So the first thing I want you to do, and I'm just going to lead you through it. So use it as an opportunity to do your own work right now. And then you'll be able to think about how you might do it with your folks you work with. So the first thing I want you to do is think about a client or a case or an individual that you're working with in your work, a supervisee maybe, that maybe has been just a little challenging. Maybe not your hardest one right now. It's easy to think of the hardest one, but maybe one that's a little challenging. And maybe you can start to notice just a little bit of a stress response happening. You want it to have a little stress response, but not the whole thing, right? So don't pick if it feels like, oh my God, this is the hardest one, think of a different one. Maybe you start to feel a little shortness of breath, a little tightening. So the first thing I want you to do is check in with your body. What do you notice when you think about this case supervisee individual? We just did the body scan not too long ago. We're getting connected with our bodies. Maybe you notice some temperature changes, some breath changes, some heart rate changes. Maybe your shoulders start going up to your ears. That's what happens to me all the time. That is mindfulness when we're paying attention to our body. Check in with your thoughts. Do you have a story in your head about this individual? About the experience you're having with the individual? Maybe some of the thoughts are even things like inner critic, comparison mindset. I'm not a good enough supervisor to work on this case. Boy, I really don't know what I'm doing. Maybe they should have so-and-so as a supervisor. They might be able to handle her. Right? Those are the kind of inner critic, comparison mindset stuff. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one in the world who has that experience. So welcome. You're not alone in that. That is the mindfulness practice. Now I want you to say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. When I think about the physical stress I experience, the potentially negative thoughts I have, when I think about this case, or I think about the supervisee, I'm experiencing some suffering. Okay, maybe it's not on a global level, but it's right here on your chest level. Maybe you can even say quietly to yourself, this is uncomfortable. This hurts a little bit. Oof, wow. That's some stress. And then acknowledging, saying to yourself, oh, everyone suffers. Suffering is a part of life for all of us. That's the common humanity piece. I know that you guys know what it feels like to feel like you had a bad session with someone. You walked away from a session and you go, God, I was not helpful at all today. I know you guys know what that feels like because if I felt it, I know you felt it. And then we've had the other way, right? Where we've had really good sessions and we're like, whoo, man, we should get paid more. We're awesome. Right? Yeah. I see that, Elizabeth, a little self-love, right? Like, because we know the good days, we also know the bad days together, but somehow it's so sneaky that the bad days, somehow we feel isolated and alone in that. Like everyone else must be walking out, patting their backs every time. And only I walk out feeling like I don't know what the heck I'm doing from every once in a while, right? That kind of the negative mindset can be so lonely. So that's common humanity. Who else might know how I feel? I bet other therapists and helpers walk out feeling like they weren't super successful today. Then the third piece. How can you soothe yourself? Is it a hand over your heart? Maybe two hands on your belly? Two hands on your heart? What do you need in this moment to physically soothe yourself? And then find words of kindness that are like antidotes to all of that negative inner critic thinking we can have. Here are some examples of some words you might use. May I give myself the compassion I need? Can I accept myself? And I would add in good days and in bad. Can I forgive myself? It's not on the sheet I gave you, but there's a couple I really like. One is, may I be imperfect and still be good. Which, like, we all make mistakes, right? And somehow, for some of us, the mistakes feel like we're not allowed to do it. Especially, I think if you're at all coming from a marginalized community, it's easy to feel like our mistakes are this big compared to other people's mistakes. And I like this idea of saying, may I know, because I am not good at something yet, because I'm still learning, because I'm still growing, that doesn't mean I am not good enough as a human being to be loved. That's a long one. And now, come back to your body. How does your body feel now compared to when you first started thinking about that case? Does anyone want to share? So I want to give you guys a chance to practice. We're going to get back in our groups, and you should have a version of that worksheet that was in your file that was sent to you today. And we can maybe put the slides back up. And if you have time to rotate, we'll probably cut off a few minutes of this one too. But if you have time to rotate through, oh, I feel like, okay, there we go. Oops, whoa, oh, it's going backwards. Pick someone to be the supervisor, someone to be the supervisee, someone to be an observer, and use the worksheet to lead yourself to practice leading it. If you have time to switch it up a little bit, great, great. Oh, sorry about that. Great. And we'll send a little note in when there's about 2 to 3 minutes left to give you a chance to discuss together how this might be helpful, and maybe thinking about is this case conceptualization? Is this a skill? Or is this an emotional thing? Does it fit into all of those categories? Maybe it doesn't have to be in one. Oh, I see lots of faces coming back. Welcome back.
Everyone should be back now, Michaela.
Nice. Thoughts, sharing, useful practice for yourself, for your supervisees, for individuals you may work with. Maybe not all new information, but information in a little package that might be helpful to think about using regularly. Go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, so I'll kind of piggyback off of what our discussion was in the group. So you had mentioned if someone has the answer to life, let me know. And I had to laugh about that because I don't feel I have the answer, right? But I've been through a lot of lived experience in all areas, from substance abuse to trauma to jail to family court to juvenile court, you name it. I've been in and out my whole life. And so a skill that I've developed over time, and I know it's difficult for most of us here and our clients, is to try to set emotions aside, especially negative emotions. I've noticed that when you have a positive momentum, whether you're influencing your client or for yourself, it helps gain traction. It helps with efficiency. Also, like I try to not be sensitive myself, right? If a client wants to come and cuss and kind of be hyper or whatever, if it's a safe place for it, please, I allow you to. I'll look past your emotion and I'll listen to your words because I understand that this is the spot to do it. And alongside through all of that, I think when we're dealing with the clients and the type of care, it's really important to know the mission, the goal, and what the purpose is, the final result over anything else in between. And the quicker you can get the client to voluntarily want to do that for themselves without them feeling forced or without you shoving things down their throat, it like rekindles a little fire. And then I've noticed when that happens, you're not really having to supervise or babysit anymore. It flips. And that same concept works with employees too, right? Because this is a leadership thing. And it works within your own self being disciplined. So it's overall is just having discipline, right? With emotions and knowing when it's appropriate to have them and not being impulsive with them.
Andrew, thank you so much for sharing. I feel like my language for it might be a little different. That for me, I feel like it's actually so important that I continue to feel,
Yes.
not put my emotions aside.
Let me
And it sounds like someone wants to talk, but and I'm happy to let you in a
turn this
second.
thing down. One moment.
Okay, if you can hang on one second, I'll finish my thought and then you can jump in. But I think the thing that we have in common or that we're sharing is how do we empower our client or our supervisee to find their own voice, their own motivation, and how do we stay regulated when they're not? How do we stay not spiraling emotionally when they are? And I think you and I might have different ways that we talk about what our strategy is, but I bet it's pretty similar in practice. Like being kind of tuned into ourselves, being able to not be reactive, however you do that. And I hope this is one more tool to add to that really extensive experience you have. Thank you. Gabrielle, I hope I said that right. I think that's whose hand up was up next.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. I just wanted to add, I had a wonderful supervisor tell me that my clients' successes and failures were not my successes and failures. And I really think that that helps to ring me in during the week when it's not so, because sometimes you're like, oh, I got a client there when really they did the work and or they did not do the work. So just wanted to share that.
Oh, nice. Gabrielle, how did you feel about this little practice? Is this something you might do with clients or with, I don't know if you supervise, but is this something you might use as a tool?
I am not a supervisor, but it is something that I can help, with maybe even my fellow employees.
Yeah, I certainly, the people that I practice with in my office, we often do this together, maybe not in this exact form anymore, and then I often offer this to clients as a way for them to start having some reflection on what their body's telling them about their emotional experience. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Your client successes and challenges are not yours. Anyone else want to share about what practicing that tool or thinking about integrating that tool might be like for you? Okay, then Laura, I think we're ready to put the slides back up. All right, let's see if I can make these slides do my bidding. Perfect. Okay, so as always, I have run out of time. We're not quite finished. So I'm not going to show you all the slides that are kind of in this third part. But one of the things I love about the Nagoski sisters' burnout book is that they make sure to talk about that self-compassion, self-care is not all about what we can do. We can keep trying to put drops in the bucket, but there are bigger things creating bigger holes that empty our ability to sustain ourselves. It's like, do we have any Gen X people in the house right now that like were Star Trek fans and know the Kobayashi Maru? Can anyone tell us what that is?
An unwinnable scenario.
It's an unwinnable scenario. That was like, oh my gosh, I feel like that I need your help making myself more concise, Joey. I appreciate that. is a recognition they recognize in their book, and I think it's important for us to recognize here, sort of from an ecological systemic perspective, that we can practice an ecological self-care like self-compassion in our daily routine for ourselves and for our families and the people that we influence and touch that our lives intersect. And there are systems at play here that are bigger than us. And we're talking about things like patriarchy, sexism, ageism, racism, all the things. If there was one word that put it into one category, I'm choosing patriarchy because I feel like it's sort of at the top of but these systems that decide that some people, some jobs, some roles are valued more. And that there's this idea, because there's so many women in our field, that we're oh yay, a Star Trekkie, another Trekkie, that now I forgot what I was saying because I was so excited there was another Trekkie in the room. That it's important for us to recognize that there are systems bigger than us, so that we don't feel overwhelmed, so that we know it's not just us. And the slides that we're not going to get to today talk about what the Nagalsis call the human giver and human taker syndrome. It talks a little bit about thinking about what you can do when you feel frustrated by the systems at hand. It talks about what that looks like in our field, where men are paid more, where men and particularly white men are more the administration, higher paid roles than the women, even though most of the agencies are filled with female, workers and therapists. Looking at the discrepancies, there's a couple of graphs and things. So take a look at that on your own. You have that. We're not going to get to today, but I think it's important for us to pause and recognize that sometimes it's bigger than us. We maybe have 35 clients and are getting paid, 40% of the kickback, and the agency gets the other say, or whatever it is. And that's not just about our ability to do self-care work. That's something else. And maybe your way of fighting that or working with that is to vote, is to write letters. Maybe it's to keep talking to your agency administrators, finding ways that you can integrate that and try to think about whether or not it's your time to get activated in this area. So a head nod to that, because we're going to be out of time. And you can go back and look at those slides. Oh, we're going back. We're going back. There we go. So where we are going to end today is just on good news and things that we can control. And Deb Dana, who some of you may have read, she's a polyvagal theorist who turned a lot of polyvagal theory into practice, right? She took the body keeps the score and actually gave us things we could do in the therapy room with it, which is lovely. She has this idea of what she calls glimmers, and they're little moments, little micro moments of feeling safe enough, connected enough, organized enough, right? That's the key word. And one of the ways she says we can help induce these glimmers, right? Sometimes they happen accidentally, but one thing she recommends is taking something, a physical object that makes you feel that way, that reminds you of the best of yourself when you're feeling the safest, and put it someplace where you get to pass by it on a regular basis. So like for me in my office, I've got a couple of these old-fashioned toys that I keep right here because it reminds me of like my family and my growing up and some of the good things from that. And so I keep them where I can pass by them. So that's a strategy she suggests, but it can also happen when you walk by a tree and you hear the flutter of the leaves, to be looking for them, to see a child playing in a water fountain. I mean, in New Mexico, that's like gold, right? Beautiful little moments that remind us of that common humanity. And so with that, I'm going to end today by reading you a little poem. And this poem is called Safety Net. It's by a woman named Rosemary Watola Traumer. And it goes like this. This morning I woke thinking of all the people I love and all the people they love, and how big that net of lovers. It felt so clear, all those invisible ties, interwoven like silken threads, strong enough to make a mesh that for thousands of years have been woven and rewoven to catch us all. Sometimes we go on as if we forget about it, believing only in the fall. But the net is just as real. Every day, with every small kindness, with every generous act, we strengthen it. Notice, even now, how as the whole world seems to be falling, it is there for us as we walk the day's tightrope, how every tie matters. And with that, I want to say thank you for making these ties and this safety net in our working community today. Thanks so much, you guys. And I
McKay,
think,
oh, sorry, this is Lisa. I have one question in the chat. What was the name and the author of the book on burnout?
oh yeah, so there's one book on burnout called The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and it's terrific and really accessible, even for clients or supervisees. And that's the Nagowski sisters. It's Emily and Amalia Nagowski.